What is the dumbest solution to a problem that actually worked? One of my friends is a teacher, and he was finding it hard to deal with his kids dabbing in class. So he started doing it. In a super, white dude awkwardly trying to fit in with no rhythm way. The kids stopped. Yeah, I don't think a lot of parents realize just how much power this method has in a lot of things. Like, anytime you want your kids to stop doing something and going along with the trend, if you start doing it too, pretending to try to look cool like them, then it will just completely kill it for them. I bought a set of couches from Art Van Furniture this summer, complete with 24-hour warranty and replacement service. Once delivered, I discovered that one of the legs arrived cracked. I spent some time on the phone with their customer service hotline, only to get 15 minutes worth of runaround. I decided to go back to the store, with the broken leg in hand, and just get a replacement. The customer service desk told me there was no way I could just get an extra leg from the store. I would need to file a claim over the phone, have my invoice number, etc. I realized that I was dressed about the same as the delivery guy, so I walked into the loading bay and told the first guy I saw that I need another leg to match this one. He didn't ask any questions, just took one off another matching couch and handed it to me. Well, hey, as long as you look like you know where you're going, most people don't question you. A tick crawled into the headphone jack of my phone. The next two searches on my phone were, "What eats ticks?" and "guinea hen mating noises." After about 15 seconds of female guinea hen sounds, the tick crawled out of my phone. You know, this is extremely useful information for one of the most niche problems I've ever heard of. I went to cancel a doctor's appointment, and they said it was a $200 charge without a week's notice. I asked how much it was to reschedule, and they said it was free. Okay, so I need to reschedule for 2 weeks out. Is 3 weeks okay? Yep. Alright, now you're all set for 3 weeks from now. Anything else I can do for you? Yes, I need to cancel my appointment. We need a week's notice. Well, my appointment is 3 weeks away. Oh, okay, sure. Thank you. I couldn't believe it worked. Yeah, I know that a lot of places will add cancellation fees to things if, like, they scheduled you a time and they were ready to come do it and then you just kind of flaked on them, so I can understand that. But the companies that are just like, yeah, you need to pay extra if you ever want to cancel our service, those guys are just scumbags. My car got pummeled in a terrible hailstorm. Little dents all over every surface of the car. My insurance would only write it off as a total loss, and I didn't want to give the car up. A friend pointed out that since I live in the desert, the heat will likely fix a lot of those dents over time. That's exactly what happened. A year later, you had to look carefully to find dents where there used to be hundreds of them. Ignoring the problem fixed it. You know, it actually takes a surprising amount for hail to dent a car. I mean, I've had hailstorms so intense that the whole house was basically shaking, and I was like, oh man, my car must be toast outside. But I went out and it looked just fine. I drove to a neighboring town 80 miles away with one burned out headlight. The remaining headlight went out while in said town. I had no money, and shops were closed regardless. These were dual beams, so although I had lost both headlights, the high beams worked. I didn't make it out of town without getting honked at and flashed repeatedly by angry passing motorists, and understandably so. What was I to do? I continued down the highway and made it about 15 miles before I'm pulled over by the first officer to see me. I explained the situation. The officer has no suggestions, since this was before cell phones. He tells me I can go, but that I won't make it home without getting stopped again. I pull over at the next exit, get a free water, dump it in the dirt, make a thin mud, and smear it over my lights. Worked like a charm. No more honks or flashes. Passed multiple officers. It's kind of funny that when your normal powered light breaks, you have to resort to your high-powered lights, and then you have to find a way to reduce the power of that high-powered light. My psych professor told us about this patient. She was a woman in her late 40s, suffering from OCD and paranoia. Every day while she drove to work, she would panic that she left her curling iron on, and it was going to burn her house down. So she would turn around, drive home, made sure it was unplugged, and then leave again. But as time went on, she started making multiple trips home, sometime in the middle of the day, and she was about to lose her job over this. No therapy was working, her medications weren't working, coping techniques weren't working, nothing could calm this woman. Then she saw my professor, and my professor told her to bring her curling iron in the car with her. So if she got nervous that it was still plugged in, she could look over and see that it was next to her. Hey, that's not a bad idea, but what if it's my stove that I think is always left on? I had to send in a letter once. The envelopes had no sticky adhesive, and couldn't find the tape at home. My dad, who was pretty much as old as Confucius, just grabs a grain of rice out of my bowl, and used it as the adhesive. It worked so well. Alright, I mean it's kinda gross, but so is licking an envelope. I couldn't connect to the Wi-Fi. My Wi-Fi adapter wasn't working right, and wouldn't connect to anything, so I right-clicked on the adapter in the control panel, clicked Diagnose, and Windows fixed it automatically. Only time I've seen it work. Wow, based on my experience, I'm amazed that that ever does anything. Nurses here will recognize this one. Once I was dealing with an extremely agitated and fearful Alzheimer's patient who had been sundowning since 3 p.m. Sundowning is an occurrence in some Alzheimer's patients where their mental function gets worse and worse as the day goes on, and once it starts to get dark. Anywho, this sweet old lady was having an absolute fit. All through my shift, I was running in and out of her room. The bed alarm kept going off. She was so confused and afraid. I desperately wanted her to go to sleep. Mind you, I had 7 other patients. I finally walked her out to the nurse station and plopped her down in a seat next to me while I do my charting. She is yelling at me and throwing things. I've had it at this point, and I'm running out of ideas. I finally look at her and say, "How will I ever finish with the wash? My husband will be so mad when he gets home. Would you help me finish?" She looks me right in the eye, clear as day, and says, "Dang it, sister, don't you ever learn? Give me that laundry." So I grabbed a stack of folded towels and messed them up real quick and plopped them in front of her. She folded all of them. I would say, "Oh, look at that." She turned around and I would mess up the towels again. This went on a few times until this sweet lady just passed out, exhausted from being so worked up earlier, and maybe from all the towel folding. I slowly push her in the desk chair down the hall and gently get her back into bed. She started to wake up, and I leaned down and whispered, "All the wash is done. You have nothing else to worry about." She slept through the night. We were both happy. I am the grandma whisperer. Yeah, it's crazy how one little distraction can take your mind off of all your problems. Back in the day, hitting a TV or other appliances to make it work. Heck, even today it still works sometimes. Yeah, I feel like I need to go watch a video about why this actually happens. Our family cat hated our family dog. Rubbed the dog all over with fresh catnip, and new best friends. See, ever since I've had Faye, I've never seen her get along with a single other animal of any kind. And I don't think even this would work. We had a problem with an order, so I wrote an email to customer support asking them on how to proceed. They told me that since the order was done in my girlfriend's name, they couldn't give me this information for privacy reasons. So I just replied, still from my email, with, "I hereby allow this person to inquire information about my order. Regards, girlfriend's name here." Apparently that was proof enough for them to give me said information, which actually was just to call a certain number. Why that information fell under the privacy policy in the first place is still a mystery to me. Well, I guess if it's that easy, you could just pretend to be whoever you want online. I mean, people kind of already try that, but it doesn't always work so well. My sister was hospitalized at 4 years old for a buildup of fluid in her head. She refused to drink any of the milk being offered by the hospital because it didn't have the cow and sunglasses on the side of the box that her other hospital's milk had. Her being a sick child for literal brain surgery, the hospital went above and beyond, sending someone to the local grocery store to try and find this milk brand with the cow wearing sunglasses. When they never found it, I googled the image, asked if they had a printer, and taped the cow to the side of her milk carton. I think it's adorable that worked. See, all I get out of this story is that kids are so stubborn that they will die before they let up on that. I bought a not chargeable iPhone 5S from a secondhand store for bargain. I used a toothpick to clean the contact. Phone is chargeable now and works perfectly. Man, my phone graveyard is up to about 10 phones now, but I still have my old iPhone 3GS, and it's having the same problem with not being able to charge. It'd be interesting to see if I could ever get the whatever's on this off of it. There was a nursing home in Germany, and the patients with dementia kept wandering off. They installed a fake bus stop in front of the nursing home, so when dementia patients got out of the building, they would sit at the fake bus stop and wait for the non-existent bus. The bus stop was clearly visible from the main offices, so whenever staff saw someone out there, they would just go and retrieve them. Solve the problem completely. I bet that most of the time they go sitting down like, "Alright, I'm gonna get away from them this time." Restarting a computer does so much. Yeah, it's kind of funny when somebody comes to you with computer troubles and you can solve a lot of their problems just by restarting it. The Americans were trying to figure out the best way to destroy the mostly wooden buildings in Japan. A pioneering scientist decided that by strapping thermite to bats and releasing them over the city during daytime, the bats would go roost in the rafters of the wooden buildings, then catch them all on fire. The problem was that this dumb idea was too effective. A bat container came open in an airbase in New Mexico, and the bats subsequently destroyed all the hangars. The Army decided that the bat bombs were too dangerous to use. Man, I don't know what year this came from, but man, warfare is just weird sometimes. Dudes pissing absolutely everywhere in the bathroom where I once worked. So the janitor put a little red sticker in each toilet, and suddenly the problem stopped. Apparently men will aim at a target 100% of the time, if a target is presented. Yeah, okay, I could see that. Sometimes that target is just a little poop stain you're trying to clean off in the bowl. Several months ago, I was working at an ICU, when a pipe burst in the ceiling and began to leak into my patient's room. The supervisor's solution was, move him into the hall. However, that would have killed this particular patient. Thankfully, it had been a rainy weekend, so I propped my umbrella up on the patient and the water ran off harmlessly into the floor. The surgeon had a tiny heart attack when he saw it a bit later, but he got over it, I suppose. Hey, an umbrella is used to stop water from falling on your head. Nobody said that it had to be coming from outside. My first vehicle was a 1985 Dodge Ram that had about 300,000 miles on it. Needless to say, it wasn't exactly reliable. Anyway, my friend and I had tickets to go see a concert in a city that was about 3 hours away. We had made it there just fine and had a blast at the concert. We couldn't afford to stay overnight, so we started on the long journey home. If all went well, we could get home by around 3 a.m. There was one stretch of highway where there was 60-ish miles between towns. It's pretty much the worst place to break down on that journey. There were big signs warning travelers to fill up with gas before leaving town, but I had half a tank. My truck sputtered out and died almost halfway between the two towns. It sure sounded like I ran out of gas, but the gauge still showed half a tank. All had not gone well. So there we were, 1:45 a.m., stuck on the side of the highway in Texas, 30 miles from the nearest town, no moonlight, and this was before teenagers had cell phones. We were screwed. After a bit of poking around with a flashlight, we discovered that we did have fuel, but the fuel pump had died. We decided to sleep in the truck to mess with it in the morning. On those old Dodge trucks, the fuel pump was inside the engine instead of in the fuel tank like a modern vehicle. It was powered by the engine instead of an electric motor. Essentially, the fuel pump would constantly pump gasoline when the engine was running, and gas would always be available for the carburetor float valve. The extra pumped gas would just go back into the gas tank. I was just drifting off to sleep when I got an idea. I worked for almost an hour in the pitch dark. I used some extra hose from an agricultural fertilizer, a drink straw, a screw clamps, and duct tape to rig the windshield fluid pump to pump fuel from the fuel line into the carburetor float line. I got in my truck, hit the windshield fluid lever, and the truck started right up. It took a bit of trial and error, but I was able to get the timing down where I knew how often to hit the lever to keep the truck running. We made it back home just after 4:30 a.m. My dad wasn't immediately amused with my handiwork, but he told all of his friends how clever his son was, so I guess it passed the dad test. Yeah, I guess it really doesn't hurt to know a lot about cars, even if you don't plan on making a career out of it. It can save your butt. Astronomer here. I went to high school with a daughter of an astronaut who went up a few times in the 90s on the space shuttle. When asked what the craziest thing that happened on his missions, he said that once they lost complete communications with Houston. They knew why on their end, but couldn't explain the problem to Houston to get it fixed. Then one of the astronauts up there remembered the ham radio. See, it's pretty standard for manned space missions to carry one, so astronauts could do outreach events with it, like talk to school children and the like during scheduled events. There's even one on the ISS. But there's no reason you can't just use it for regular communication too. And they were over the Indian Ocean, coming up on Australia, so maybe they could contact a ham radio operator there? I just love to imagine what it was like to be the Aussie when he established the contact of his life. Hey buddy, we need you to call NASA and tell them... But hey, it worked. Yeah, it's kind of weird to think that, like, let's say you're stranded in the middle of the desert like that guy in the other story. When you're looking for help, you're thinking, alright, who is around me? But I guess if you're flying over space, you're like, alright, who is down there that I can talk to? Back when I was in 6th form at school, we had new sofas in the common room. A room where our year could hang out and relax, work, and listen to music on our time off. They had been there only a couple days before, and one of the legs snapped off of the sofas. Now, we could have attempted to fix it, or just left a missing leg, but there were often checks, and cleaners moving furniture would have noticed it was broken, and we would have gotten in trouble for not respecting school property. So we did the only sensible thing, which was to break all the legs off the sofa, and then all the sofas in the room so they were all the same height. We stashed the legs in the ceiling, and nobody knew a thing. Well, that's all for, I can't believe making this video worked. But that's all I've got for this week, so I'll see you next week.